2 weeks ago, I was 9-2. I'd clinched a bye week for my playoffs, and now my team is falling apart. I hope you're not dealing with the same stuff that I am, but we'll talk about everything that just happened in week 13. Starting off with our first game, the Niners-Browns. On the Niners side of things, Brock Purdy remains nothing more than a streaming quarterback. McCaffrey remains a top 3 running back in fantasy. Kittle remains a top 3 tight end in fantasy. Juwan Jennings remains as the wide receiver 1 and a borderline flex option. And then Ricky Pearsall is somebody that you can go ahead and, I don't want to say cut, but he is not startable until further notice. Going over to the Cleveland Browns side of things, Shedeur Sanders, obviously you never start him. The running back situation is very interesting in that if you look at the actual volume that Judkins has, he had 23 carries in a game in which the Browns trailed from start to finish. Like, I have no idea how the Browns came through in a game they lost 8-26, had 31 rush attempts to 26 pass attempts. Absolutely wild. They're not letting Shedeur Sanders throw the ball whatsoever. Going over to the pass catchers, Harold Fannin leads the team. He scores a touchdown. And if you look at this chart from PFF, you will see the snaps going in the right direction for Harold Fannin. He's on my bench and maybe in the fantasy playoffs if he continues to trend well. I start him over Dallas Goedert, but he would have to have some really strong performances from here. Now going over to the Jags-Titans, with Trevor Lawrence remains a streaming quarterback, nothing else. With Travis Etienne, absolutely crazy to see in a prime matchup where they win by 22 points. He does literally nothing. My comment section was screaming at me to put Etienne ahead of Saquon Barkley in our rest of season rankings, and it's not like Barkley's any good, but damn, Etienne getting vultured by Shell Tootin. This shows why he's not a set it and forget it running back 1 rest of season. Going over to the receivers, something actually does change here. I was dumb enough to believe that Brian Thomas Jr. was going to come back in and be the wide receiver 1 for Trevor Lawrence. I was dumb enough to think that Brian Thomas Jr. was going to have a negative impact on Jakobi Meyers. Well, it doesn't matter if you're looking at the receptions, the yards, the touchdowns, the targets, the snaps. Jakobi Meyers was the true wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville in this game. Now, how would I rank these guys going into the future? They at least are in the same tier. And honestly, Myers probably has to be ahead of Brian Thomas Jr., as sad as it is. And I will say with this, I don't want to be super excited about any of the receivers here, though, because you do have Britton Strange actually expanding his own role as well. On the Tennessee Titans side of things, literally nothing's worth talking about. You would never start any of these players. I'm sorry to keep it that brief, but hell, we're in week 14. All right. We figured out a lot of this stuff already. Going over to the Texans game, CJ Stroud not startable in any circumstance. Woody Marks actually got injured in this game, ended up coming back in, but despite missing a little bit of time, he still had 20 opportunities. Now, Nick Chubb had the rushing touchdown. Nico Collins had a rushing touchdown. So despite Woody Marks yet again getting all the volume, having 20 opportunities in a game in which the Texans win, he still doesn't do anything with it. He still doesn't even hit 10 fantasy points, which is super frustrating because he was a great receiving back out of college. I think you rank him as a borderline flex play dependent on matchup going into the future. I have Nico Collins on my own fantasy team. I'm going to continue to start him as a wide receiver 1, zero hesitation. He had 10 targets in this game and that rushing touchdown. I know a lot of people are interested in Jaden Higgins. He kind of plays the same role that he did last week. It looks like his role's not necessarily expanding anymore, but he is a desperation play that you can look at in deeper formats. And then Dalton Schultz is a viable tight end as well, who had 8 targets. Now going over to the Indianapolis Colts. I am not a doctor. I'm sadly not smart enough to be one. Everybody here knows that. But if there is a doctor in the chat, dear God, let me know. Are we going to have to be worried about this Daniel Jones injury limiting his mobility going into the future? Because that was the report coming into the game, and he had 1 carry in this game for 1 rushing yard. And clearly, the Indianapolis Colts offense struggled. Now, again, you had a really tough matchup against the Houston Texans defense here. So maybe, just maybe, Daniel Jones and the Colts end up bouncing back, but I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit concerned that this Colts offense is actually going to trail down the stretch with these tough matchups that they have combined with the Daniel Jones injury. Now, I think how this impacts fantasy things, I'm less excited to start Daniel Jones if he's not going to run the ball as much. I am still starting Jonathan Taylor as a top 3 running back regardless, duh. And then looking at the pass catchers, I'm less excited about them in general. Michael Pittman Jr. face plants. Alec Pierce is the guy that walks away with the receiving touchdown among the receivers. Josh Downs isn't rosterable. And then Tyler Warren is still a set it and forget it top 5 tight end. But I think Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr. are just flex options at this point if this Daniel Jones injury is limiting the offense. Now with the Saints-Dolphins game, Tyler Shuck, you would never start him. Never even think about it. The running back usage is very interesting here. You actually have Devin Neal playing almost all the snaps. Devin Neal played 59 out of 72 snaps. And with Devin Neal as well, he did have the receiving workload where he actually had 22 receiving yards off of 3 receptions. He played every single snap in the 2-minute drill, every single snap on third down, and every single snap at the goal line. So Devin Neal in better matchups in the future for the Saints may actually be startable in games in which Alvin Kamara were to miss. And then going over the receivers, I know Devon Vele comes away with the receiving touchdown. Big day. If y'all don't know, Broncos traded him before the season. A lot of people are excited about him. And of course, you have no Shaheed, so maybe you could assume that he is going to have that expanded role. Here's my thing. At best, he's the wide receiver 2 for the New Orleans Saints. So I'm not interested. You start Chris Olave. Juwan Johnson is a desperation tight end. And then Devin Neal in games in which Alvin Kamara misses is a low-end RB2/flex play. Now, on the Miami Dolphins side of things, you would never start Tua. Running back, Devon Achane, set and forget it, top 5 running back every single week. And the receivers, I started Jalen Waddle on my own fantasy team. Obviously, super frustrating. It's not like Tua had a great day here. This is a team that was able to have 32 total rush attempts in comparison, only 12 completions from Tua. But Waddle still leads the team in targets. It's not like Darren Waller is going to replace Tyreek Hill in this offense. So realistically, for myself, I still plan on starting Jalen Waddle going into the future as a wide receiver 2 consistently, to be honest. And then I know that Darren Waller can be an interesting pickup if you're very much a desperate tight end owner, but I would not be super excited about it. The way I'd be excited about starting TreVeyon Henderson in tomorrow night's game. If you don't know, TreVeyon Henderson is currently higher lower 82.5 total yards on Underdog Fantasy and higher lower 13.75 fantasy points for Monday night. But of course, if you want to check out any of those projections at any time, link to Underdog Fantasy is always in the description. It's always in the comment section. Code FLOCK will get you $100 out of your account after you play your first 5. And on top of that, you'll get free questions that you can ask me in the live streams. And then also, you're going to be getting a gimme pick for that Monday night game, which is going to be a Drake May higher lower half a total yard pick. Links in the description, comment section. Underdog's available in almost every state. Now, moving over to our next team, we are going to be looking at the Atlanta Falcons. Kirk Cousins is not startable in any circumstance. With the running backs, Bijan Robinson continues to be an elite top 3 to 4 running back that you set it and forget it every single week. Tyler Algier continues to vulture random rushing touchdowns, but you're not going to be starting Tyler Algier in any game in which Bijan Robinson's healthy. But if Bijan were to go down, Algier does turn into a league winner. And then with the pass catchers, Darnell Mooney, I would never consider starting. Kyle Pitts obviously had the big bump up with no Drake London. But ultimately, I do think that London's probably going to be back this next week. And if London's back this next week, all these guys are less interesting that are catching the ball. Now, on the New York Jets side of things, Tyrod Taylor, you would never start him in any circumstance. I know he runs the ball a little bit, but who cares? It's Tyrod Taylor and it's the Jets. Breece Hall, I have him on my fantasy team. I continue to start him every single week with zero hesitation. Good and bad with Breece this week. The good, he did play pretty much every single snap. Isaiah Davis wasn't out there at all. Isaiah Davis played 8 snaps in comparison to Breece Hall at 58. The bad is Breece Hall didn't really get involved as a receiver. He had 2 receptions for 8 receiving yards. So I really hope that role expands going into the future. And then looking at the wide receiver options, hook 'em horns, Adonai Mitchell has himself a day. 12 targets, 8 receptions, 102 receiving yards, and the receiving touchdown. Y'all know I was not excited about starting John Mechie this week. I think we ranked him at like wide receiver 50. I'm actually more excited about Adonai Mitchell's upside in this offense after a game like this. 1, because the volume was there. And 2, he was a pretty decent prospect coming out of Texas. At least a lot of film grinders Really did like him. We'll talk about him more in the waiver wire video on Tuesday, so just make sure you're subscribed. Going over to the Rams, Panthers, Matthew Stafford obviously disappoints with the interceptions, but for me, Matthew Stafford remains a must-start quarterback every single week. He's not an elite option because he's not going to run the ball, but the passing volume will be there. Going over and looking at the running back situation, Kyren Williams and Blake Corum both come away with the rushing touchdown. Ultimately, I'm not going to be super concerned. I still view Kyren Williams as the locked and loaded starter, Blake Corum as a handcuff running back that should be rostered in all formats in case Kyren were to go down. Very similar to like a poor man's Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. Looking at the receivers, of some guys, Xavier Smith leads the team in receiving yards. Frankly, it doesn't matter. You start Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams as top 12 wide receivers every single week into the future, and this game's not going to change that. Now, one of the things that is going to change will be our evaluation of the Carolina Panthers offense. Y'all know I'm a Bryce Young hater. I've been a Bryce Young hater for a very long time. Bryce Young just had a hell of a football game. The Panthers are somehow a winning football team. They are 7-6 right now. They just took down a team that a lot of people thought was the best team in the NFL. But if he's stringing together these better games, and he does look like he's improving, keep in mind, at the end of last season, he looked a lot better than he did at the beginning. Maybe he just needs a little bit of time to ramp up as the year goes on. All of a sudden, the wide receivers are more exciting. Now, the running back usage is very confusing for me. I don't want to question the Panthers. They just won this game. They were, I think, 10.5-point dogs. But Chuba Hubbard in there a ton. Chuba Hubbard leads this team in rushing. Chuba Hubbard also at the same time gets you the receiving touchdown, the big play. He has 41 receiving yards in comparison to Rico Dowdle with 21. Here's the deal. At least if we look at the snaps for this game, Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard split the early downs 50-50. But Chuba Hubbard took everything on third down. So Rico Dowdle has to get nuked in my rankings. I previously had Rico Dowdle as a set it and forget it elite running back one start, but this is now back-to-back games with this Chuba Hubbard usage. So that 100% is going to change things. Tedero McMillan gets the big touchdown at the end of the game, but he only had 2 targets. Jalen Coker actually had 6 targets, and y'all know what I've said with Coker all year is where's the upside? At best, he's the wide receiver 2 for Bryce Young, but hell, if Bryce Young can continue to do this, maybe that's not too bad of a thing. Now going over to the Cardinals Bucks, Jacoby Brissett continues to have a ton of passing volume, 40 passing attempts for this team in comparison to only 19 carries. I wonder if when they get Trey Benson back, they're a little more balanced, but they haven't been since Brissett's been the starter. Running back usage, frankly, doesn't really matter. Michael Carter, Bam Knight split the backfield 50-50. Not super excited about either one of these running backs. Where I would get excited if his Benson does come back and looks good. The receiving options, we knew that once Marvin Harrison came back in, you could not start Michael Wilson. But now Marvin Harrison gets banged up with a heel injury. So this is going to be something that's super important to monitor through the week. I can't really find much information on it right now. Obviously, I'll be streaming every single night, giving you all updates when I get them. But we've very clearly seen, at least in my opinion, when Marv is healthy, he's a flex play, boom bust. When he's healthy, Michael Wilson is not startable. And Trey McBride's the tight end 1 in fantasy, regardless of if Marv is active or on Mars. Now, the Bucs side of things, Baker Mayfield injured. He doesn't really miss a beat. I mean, it looks very, very similar from a box score perspective. I would say Baker's still low in QB1 that you play based off matchups. Bucky Irving comes out. They tell us that they're going to slow roll him, very similar to what they did with Chris Godwin. That was a damn lie. Bucky Irving had 17 carries in comparison to Rachaad White with 2 and Sean Tucker with 2. So Bucky Irving, if you combine this with the historical receiving skill set that he has had, he looks 100%, and he looks like he is a running back 1, set it and forget it in fantasy every week. I will say, cut Rachaad White if you have him, and I would honestly consider cutting Sean Tucker, because even if Bucky were to get re-injured, Sean Tucker and Rachaad White go into a running back by committee, where I would prefer a running back like Blake Corum, where if Kyren were to go down, I think that Blake Corum's going to take every touch. Going over to the receivers, Chris Godwin expands his role here. Chris Godwin actually plays 40 snaps and runs 23 routes, which is the second most on this team. He leads this team in receiving yards. I would still rank Igbuka as the wide receiver 1. He played more snaps, ran more routes, drew more targets. But if Godwin's expanding his role here, it is going to eat into the upside of Igbuka. And then obviously with Godwin back in, Kate Otton's not startable. Tez Johnson's not startable. Cut him if you have him. Now, we knew the Vikings projected to be the lowest scoring offense in the league coming into this week. I didn't expect it to be this bad, though. I had never heard the name Max Brosmer my entire life until Wednesday. My take on it was bench all Vikings, but Justin Jefferson. And I'm going to be honest with y'all. This is something that y'all may have to make your own decision and ignore me. I'm going to tell you what I would do with my own fantasy team. If I had Justin Jefferson and I took him in round 1, I would be so stubborn that I would refuse to take him out of my starting lineup. Very similar. If I had Lamar Jackson on my team, I would be so stubborn. I'm starting Lamar Jackson in week 14. I'm starting Justin Jefferson in week 14. I'm probably going to lose doing it, but I'd rather go down with the ship with Justin Jefferson in my lineup than go down with the ship if Justin Jefferson's on my bench. So I'm an idiot. Again, y'all have heard me say that 1,000 times because it's true. But with these absolute studs, even if the offense is the worst in the league, I think my take with the Vikings here is the same it was before this game. They're god-awful. Everybody's a bench but Justin Jefferson. Now, one thing that will be an interesting note is Aaron Jones goes down. So in deeper formats, Jordan Mason 100% needs to be rostered because if Aaron Jones is really injured here, Jordan Mason is the projected starter. Now, going over to the Seattle Seahawks, while yes, they score a lot of points and win this game by a wide margin, if you were watching the game, you could see that Sam Darnold was struggling. Like, this wasn't a very comfortable Seahawks offensive performance. I mean, yes, they scored a lot of points. 1, they had a pick 6, and 2, just when the opposing quarterback has 4 interceptions and you force fumbles, you're going to get the ball in a decent area of the field, so you're going to be able to easily score points. But Darnold, I would never start in fantasy at this point. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet continue to split the backfield 50-50. Walker's the desperation start if you needed to put someone in. I don't want to look at the snaps too much. This game was a blowout. And then with JSN, obviously disappointing, but he is still a top 3 wide receiver. Set it and forget it in fantasy every week. Ultimately, you start JSN here. Kenneth Walker is an interesting depth play, but nothing more than that. Now, going over to the Raiders and the Chargers, Geno Smith, you would never start. Ashton Jeanty, I'm going to let you know, I would be stubborn enough to say, hey, he's in my lineup every single week regardless. Yes, he never does anything. Yes, this offensive line's garbage. Yes, this is one of the worst teams in the league. But I took him in round 1. I took him in round 2. I didn't, but if you have him, you probably did. I think you got to start him. He actually does have 8 targets in this game, 15 carries, 23 opportunities. Brock Bowers still an elite tight end, set it and forget it every single week. And then no wide receivers are interesting, even if Jack Bash played a little bit more. Who cares? It's the Raiders. Then going over to the Chargers, I thought we were about to see some Trey Lance fireworks. They put Lance in the game, and every single drop back, I'm going, oh, please, let him throw it. Let him sling it to Quentin Johnson. It'll be the best day of my entire life. And no, they're not letting Trey Lance throw it at all. If he's taking a snap, they're running the ball. And it will be super important to know because you have Justin Herbert undergoing surgery for the broken left hand on Monday. I have no idea what the severity of it is. Jet Mueller tweeted out, oh boy, hopefully this doesn't lead to much missed time. Snaps will be main concern given it's his left hand, but plan to be without him for week 14 and possibly longer. So if it's Trey Lance, Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, Oronde Gadsden, and Quentin Johnston are all players that you just absolutely have to bench. Now, Kamani Vidal obviously looks awesome, but honestly, may not matter if you're going to get Amari Hampton back in this next week. Now, going over to the Bills Steelers, I'm starting Josh Allen every single week, and over the past 2 weeks, it's been a living hell. The Bills can't throw the ball, whether it's their offensive tackles being injured, whether it's the fact that they're picking up Brandon Cooks off the scrap heap and praying that he does something. Like, how the hell is this the wide receiver core that Josh Allen has to deal with? Now, Josh Allen still remains top 3 quarterback in fantasy. Set it and forget it every week, but still, it's ugly. James Cook remains a locked and loaded top 10 running back. The team ran the ball 51 times. James Cook led them in receiving and led them in rushing. 20 fantasy points without a touchdown. Ray Davis is the handcuff back if anything were to occur to James Cook. And then with the receivers, nobody is startable. No, literally nobody. And then on the Steelers end of this, I'm surprised Rodgers even came back into the game after the hit. Obviously, Mason Rudolph, absolute garbage. But no Steeler quarterback is startable. Looking at the running back usage, Jalen Warren gets the rushing touchdown. Jalen Warren really has no upside, though. We've said it 1,000 times. He hasn't hit 20 fantasy points this year. Kenneth Gainwell, premium handcuff. If Warren were to go down, he's a must-start name. And then I'm freaking starting DK Metcalf right now, but I'm going to tell you one thing. It does not feel good, and it'll feel much, much worse if Aaron Rodgers continues to be limited, which looks like it will be the case. But I think that's all I got for you. I hope your team's not falling apart like mine is. But, of course, if you have not already, make sure, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And we got about another month until this is all over, and then you may never see me again. We'll see. But obviously, if you want to check out any of the projections for Monday, links in the description, comment section. Code FLOCK will give you a $100 bonus on Underdog after you play your first 5. You'll get free questions that you can ask me in the live streams, and we're streaming pretty much every single night until Christmas. And on top of that, you are going to be getting a Gimme Drake May pick, higher, lower, half a total yard for that Monday night game. But much love, ladies and gentlemen. Really appreciate you. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and I hope I get to see you out in the live stream on Monday.